People were coming from everywhere to support the Republican government. One unemployed Welsh collier, Alun Menai Williams, had been in the regular army, really to have something to do. Now he was to join the German anti-Nazi Tellmann battalion.
There was an American came to see me, and he asked me what qualifications I had, and I said I'd been in the RAMC and I was a trained medical man. So he said, well, right, we'll put you into the medical corps, the International Brigade. I was at Albacete, I think, for about 4 days. Very strange place to be, because I was one Englishman there. There was no other Englishman there except myself. There was a few Americans. There was a lot of Spaniards, Germans, Italians, they were all there. Frenchmen, Belgians. From Albacete, then I was sent to the Jarama front, where I joined the Tellmann battalion as a first aid orderly. In other words, I'd been in Spain, I think, about 5 days before I was thrown into the front.
We were all put in a group together, and we were given khaki type of uniforms. Well, I had the blue suits, which I hadn't had long, £2.10 from Burton's. And so I didn't know what to do with it. Anyway, I saw a farm worker passing by and asked him, he's about my height, would you like a suit?
The uniforms we were fitted out with were ski suits. And the helmet was a French army helmet. The bandolier was a cavalry bandolier. So we were a mixture of infantry, cavalry, and Lord knows what, skiers.
They put us to understand that when we signed that form, that we were Republican soldiers and we were under the jurisdiction of the Republican government. So we said, okay, we'll accept that, and that's what we done.
The first training we had were with wooden sticks. It was only about 2 days before we had orders to move into action, we were issued with rifles.
They didn't fire the damn things because most of them wouldn't fire. The one I had, I think it had a barrel about 4 feet long. Might have been used by Napoleon in the Battle of Waterloo, for all I know, because it was a French one. We also had a machine gun there, which they called the Chouchou. They'd take it apart, and there was nobody capable of putting it back together again. It consisted of 2 huge long springs and a barrel and a few bits and pieces. It was hanging about there for quite a while. I don't know what happened to it, but once we'd taken it to pieces, that was the beginning and the end of it. I suppose our training altogether took us about 3 weeks. Then we'd go on to marching, go out in the morning, and we'd find that we had a Frenchman. And we had to learn French for the orders. The next day we'd have a German, and possibly a Spaniard. Okay? And when these Spaniards give the order, it used to amuse me, because they used to make it so long that if you wanted to turn right, they'd start to shout when he was about 100 yards from the corner you had to turn. The order went something like this: Cambio la direczione de la cabeza de la coloma por la izquierda, hip! And when the hip come, you were somewhere by the corner, like. Well, we had to get used to that, and then with the Germans, with their links, as we were marching. The trouble was that I think that when our training was finished, or supposed to be finished, we were more confused when we started.
Well, when it came to trench sticking, obviously there'd be nobody in the world to beat ex-Welsh miners. This part was quite easy for us.
But Jack Roberts of Abertrydydd had other talents. He made these drawings when, later, he was sent to a school for officers away from the front line. Just look at the detail. Clearly the work of a man who could have walked into Sandhurst, as long as nobody asked about his politics.
Jack, now, he became a bit of a master on the machine gun. He could judge distance, and he could put his sights right. And it was remarkable to see the way that a man that had never seen a machine gun before could use it.
We were using our time very often in the evening, dismantling these in the dark and assembling them, because as the instructor would say, it's quite possible that at some point in the dark you've got to use your gun, rifle or machine gun, and it's no good unless it's functional. So you've got to be able to dismantle it and assemble it for your own safety.
But when he used a rifle, It was a comical thing because he was left-handed, you see. When we were on target practice, the little target practice we had, Jack would pick up his rifle and swing it round and everybody would duck. He didn't know where the hell we were going to fire, being left-handed. Well, then he was told that the Russians were making rifles left-handed for left-handed men, and they advised him to go to Russia to wait.
There didn't seem to be any organization, you know, as we'd look at it in the British Army. Then some seemed to be wanting to do this, some seemed to be wanting to do that. So I told the boys, well, this seems to be a kind of a cockeyed army to me. There's no discipline here. Well, he said, well, we'll have to wait and see it, so.
With such small training, I realized that I was not going to survive because I could hardly load and unload a rifle. So I realized I must find somebody who was a trained soldier to help me. And immediately I met two jocks, Andy and Tom, who had been soldiers in the British Army. And I said, you must show me what to do. And they said, okay, Taff, we'll show you.
There were so many things they hadn't bargained for. Ideologies are one affair, foreign bugs another. They needed the reassurance of the familiar. They wrote home to explain the best way of sending woodbines through the mail. Their pay, when they got it, was about 8p a day.
The food was always dished up, something of a stew with everything in it, including mule meat or goat's meat or whatever was there. And of course, the rice was always thrown in, more or less, as a vegetable. But our boys, they didn't want that, so they asked for their own cooks. Because we wanted rice pudding after our dinner that we've been used to in this country. Anyway, we got our cooks to make rice pudding. Some of them made it all right, others made it that you wanted a hammer and chisel. Well, I was lucky, I always had the best. I must have had a good cook. But the boys, the Spaniards, used to laugh at us. Roja con leche, oh, it was a great joke. Rice with milk. But some of them now, they had the courage to taste it. And before you could say knife, they all wanted it. So the rice came out of the soup and into the rice pudding.
One volunteer from Aberdare wrote home and asked his mother to send him some Welsh cakes through the communist headquarters in London. Welsh cakes, antidote to the Spanish mule that took some stomaching.
Well, whenever they came in with the mule on their shoulders, as we were in the cookhouse, that was the next day's meal. It stank to high heaven. There's no smell on earth like it. I suppose it would be all right if you went into a cemetery where they disinterrate the dead. It might have a comparison. But otherwise, I never smelled anything like it in my life. And being a vegetarian, more or less, I had to eat that to keep alive. And you could understand that every meal that I had with the stew and the mule meat was anathema. I didn't want it. But if I could have a bit of rice and a few beans, I was in God's pocket. When we got to Madrigueras, this young lad, he told me that the local father was a member of the fascist party. When the hostilities broke out, he had got him into the church tower and he was shooting at the women and children where they draw water from and do their washing. And two brothers went up into the tower and they caught this priest, they put the rope around his neck and threw him out. His head was on the rope and his body was on the floor.
It was a war of the bitterest possible bloodshed. Wholesale executions were carried out by both sides, and not merely of those who carried arms. More than 100,000 Spaniards were executed by their fellow countrymen off the field of battle. Soon the new members of the International Brigade, we had a lemming approach, said one Welsh collier later, soon they would feel the hell of the Civil War explode all around them.
None of the fates can throw any light on the matter of our survival.
They're using the women and children as a cover, throwing these grenades over, and they run away at the back.